ladies and gentlemen. This is the Boar Radio Network. I am your host, Red Boar, and we are live here for episode 3 of the Boar Radio Network. Today, what I want to talk to you guys about is just have a short episode on California. I've been reading numerous news reports over the last couple days talking about all the craziness going on in California. And so I decided to put together a little show to kind of give a quick overview of what's going on and maybe highlight a few of the issues. So, a new report just released today stated that California was the poverty capital of the United States, which has to be hard to believe if you were just an alien dropped in. California has one of the biggest cities in the country, Los Angeles. Silicon Valley is located in California. And there's other numerous industries located in California. Then you add in the massive welfare programs that they have there, and it's kind of hard to believe that they would be the quote poverty capital of the United States. But give me a second, let me get a little drink of coffee here. But according to the Census Bureau, there's the supplemental poverty measure branch of the Census Bureau. California ranks number 1 when it comes to the highest poverty rate in the country. However, given the robust job growth and several large industries in the state, the question of why looms large. When one considers that California has a per capita GDP that has increased over the last 5 years at a rate of 12.5%, it's kind of mind-boggling, because when you look at the nationwide average of per state breakdown of GDP growth, the average in the United States is a 6% GDP growth by state per capita GDP growth, while California is actually growing over the last 5 years at a double that rate at 12.5%. So it leads me to to ask a question. Could it be that California's leaders have refused to spend enough money to address the issue? Well, in fact, no. California state and local governments have spent nearly $1 trillion in the last 20 years on public welfare programs. Interestingly enough, while California has only 12% of the nation's population, it is home to 30% of the nation's welfare recipients. Wow. What does this mean then? Well, obviously, the massive California welfare state has not only failed to decrease the poverty in the state, but on the contrary, actually seems to have made it worse. Another contributing factor to the poverty rate in California is housing. More than 40% of California households spend more than 30% of their income on housing-related costs. And coupled with that, a shortage in available units continues to drive prices even higher. So begs the question, why is there a shortage of units? You would think if prices are going up, more units would be built. Therefore, maybe it would over time bring down the cost of housing. However, simply put, there is a shortage of units because of the huge burden that California regulators have imposed on builders. Extensive environmental regulations aimed at reducing CO2 emissions make energy and construction costs much more expensive. For example, the California Environmental Quality Act, which was passed in 1971, adds around an average of $1 million to the cost of completing a typical housing addition in California. Now, of course, those prices are going to have a huge range to them, but this stat that I got, the $1 million added to the cost of the average housing addition, this stat was brought from a land use group that monitors the impacts that such regulations have on building cost in California. Also, energy cost. Since 2012, a study found that over 1 million California households faced energy expenditures exceeding 10% of household income, and in certain counties, the rate of expenditure was 17% of income. So you couple somewhere between 10 and 17% people are spending on energy, and then they're spending another 30% or more sometimes on housing. Sometimes people are even spending 50% on housing. It just becomes, that's not even including food or anything like that. It becomes a pretty outrageously expensive scenario. Another nail in the California economic coffin is a measure recently passed which raises the minimum wage from $10 an hour to $15 an hour by 2022. Though good intentioned, a report from Harvard University found that overall higher minimum wages increases overall exit rates for restaurants from said regions, and estimates that for every $1 minimum wage is increased, there is a corresponding 14% increase in the likelihood that a restaurant will exit a given region. This is obviously not helping the California economy. So to summarize, even Harvard admits that overall higher minimum wages obviously means that businesses are more likely to leave an area, and that they even tag a percentage onto it, which is 14% likelihood, a 14% greater chance that a business will leave a region for every $1 that the minimum wage is raised. That's according to a Harvard study. In fact, according to a study done by the Employment Policy Institute in 2017, California can expect to lose 400,000 jobs by 2022 as a result of the increase in minimum wages. So, that's a little bit of a summary there on the employment situation and the economic situation. Just a quick summary. Obviously, we could go more in depth into that, but I just want to give you a little overview of some interesting things I found about the California economy. Now we move into all the natural disasters going on in California. Give me a second here. I'll change this picture if I can. There we go. So, wildfires, mudslides, and flu. 2018 is off to a rough start for California. Fires raged last fall and into the winter all across California, with the largest being the Thomas Fire, which I'm sure most everyone has heard about. And the Thomas Fire was just declared 100% contained about a week ago. The Thomas Fire was the largest in the state's history and burned over 282,000 acres and covered an area the size of Dallas and Miami combined. 18 people were killed during this fire, and over 1,000 buildings, many of which were homes, were destroyed. Also, rewind a little bit further back into October, and there was a bunch of wildfires in Northern California wine country that actually killed more people than the Thomas Fire. It killed 39 people, but it was a little bit smaller, about 30% less in size. It burned only about 200,000 acres. And then, after the wildfires kind of started getting under control, because of the wildfires, because of the intense burn-off that had occurred, all the vegetation that kind of anchors the soil on these hillsides was very vulnerable to flash flooding and heavy rainfall. Well, this happened. After the fires ended, a whole bunch of rain came, and in came the mudslides. Heavy rains last week triggered deadly mudslides that killed at least 20 people. Rivers of mud and debris raced down hillsides in Santa Barbara County, burying homes and even wiping some homes off their very foundations. Wow, that's pretty scary. The slides also took a toll on local infrastructure, as downed trees and power lines blocked roads and left many temporarily without power. The mudslides were so massive that they even temporarily shut down a major West Coast highway, the US 101, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with, not me, that connects Montecito to Santa Barbara. And if that was not enough, last but not least, we have the flu. The flu season in the Golden State is in full swing, and it has left 27 people under the age of 65 dead. 27 people aged under 65 are now dead in one of the worst flu outbreaks across the nation, and particularly California, in years. This is up from an average of 4 people a year, okay? That's a 600% increase, over 600% increase. So on average, 4 people under the age of 65 die from the flu in California. So far this year, they've had 27 people die. The heavy flu season has left many hospitals in the state overloaded and struggling with shortages of medication such as Tamiflu. So hospitals are struggling with the overload. I mean, everyone knows that the healthcare industry in the United States is already taxed to the breaking point. And now just add in the worst flu season in years, coupled with all the other disasters going on, not to mention all the hurricanes that have been happening across the South. It's just been crazy this year. But yeah, things have been pretty bad in California over the last few months. And with the heavy flu season in full swing, it doesn't look to be changing anytime soon. And all that being said, it makes one wonder. First of all, what did California do to piss off God? What has been happening in California? Why all these disasters? Why all this economic calamity, all this natural disaster calamity? I mean, I'd like to know y'all's opinions. What do y'all think? Do y'all think it's just bad luck? Or is it something maybe a little more supernatural? Also, it makes one wonder what could be next. Are we talking about potentially some earthquakes in the mix? Because you've been hearing rumblings. A little 4.4 magnitude here, a little 4.4 magnitude there. And just makes you wonder what's next. Could the big one be coming? This is the Boar Radio Network. I am your host, Red Boar, and we are live here for episode 3 of the Boar Radio Network. Today, what I want to talk to you guys about is just have a short episode on California. I've been reading numerous news reports over the last couple days talking about all the craziness going on in California. And so I decided to put together a little show to kind of give a quick overview of what's going on and maybe highlight a few of the issues. So, a new report just released today stated that California was the poverty capital